Hey everyone, this is Alicia with Eternal Paranormal. I am eternally grateful for those of you that are tuning in and those of you that will be tuning in. Today is Paranormal History Podcast. Today we are going to be discussing the Fox sisters, and I have an article that I'm going to read through. And I also have a YouTube video that we're going to go over. And I do have to say that I do not own any rights to any of the articles or the video clips that are shown tonight. And please share this out. Sharing is caring. So let's get into it. Oh, hold on. We got a comment here. Oh, and I'll also be popping back and forth between comments and the article and stuff. So, hi, Molly. How are you? I also got to say, stay tuned for Wednesday night. Molly is going to be coming onto the podcast, and I have two co-hosts. It's going to be me, Adam Ramos from Texas, and Rob Tomasevich from New Jersey, and my daughter and Molly are going to be our guests, discussing what happened Sunday with the solar eclipse, blood moon, and UFOs. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up that article. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay, if you can see everything all right. Please share this out. Like I said, I appreciate you all. So one moment. So the Fox sisters, guys, were the first part of when the Spiritualist Movement began. So the Spiritualist Movement, well, I won't talk too much about it. I'll just let the article speak for itself, guys. Hi, Brian. Thank you. Thanks for joining. I really appreciate it. Seriously. All right. Shall we get started? The Fox sisters and the rap on spiritualism. Their seances with the departed launched a mass religious movement, and then one of them confessed that it was a common delusion. So I feel like she didn't believe it quite as much as her other sisters did, just saying. And maybe she didn't want to believe, and she was just going along with it. Who knows? But let's go ahead and dive deep. So these, you guys, are the Fox sisters. Here is a picture of them. And a smaller photograph. It says for the photo, the Fox sisters from left to right, Leah, Kate, and Maggie from Radical Spirits. So that was kind of like their team name. Kind of like all the paranormal teams out there, they have their own names. So, one of the greatest religious movements of the 19th century began in the bedroom of two young girls living in a farmhouse in Hydesville, New York. On a late March day in 1848, Margaret, aka Maggie Fox, 14, and Kate, her 11-year-old sister, waylaid a neighbor eager to share an odd and frightening phenomenon. Every night around bedtime, they said they heard a series of raps on the walls and furniture. Raps that seemed to manifest with a peculiar, otherworldly intelligence. The neighbor, skeptical, came to see for herself. Joining the girls in the small chamber they shared with their parents. While Maggie and Kate huddled together on their bed, their mother, Margaret, began the demonstration. "Now count 5, she ordered, and the room shook with the sound of 5 heavy thuds. "Count 15, she commanded, and the mysterious presence obeyed. Next, she asked it to tell the neighbor's age. 33 distinct raps followed. "If you are an injured spirit," she continued, "manifest it by 3 raps," and it did. So, this, you guys, would be what is considered an intelligent spirit, if there really was a haunting going on in the home. And it sounds like if this really was happening in their home, Margaret seemed more in touch with the spirit because it was responding to her directly. So maybe it might not have even responded to somebody else. The spirits don't communicate with certain people. They only communicate with those whom they feel most comfortable, 9 times out of 10. Margaret Fox did not seem to consider the date, March 31st, April Fool's Eve, and the possibility that her daughters were frightened not by an unseen presence, but by the expected success of their prank. The Fox family deserted the house and sent Maggie and Kate to live with their older sister, Leah Fox Fish, in Rochester. The story might have died there were it not for the fact that Rochester was a hotbed for reform and religious activity. The same vicinity, the Fingers Lakes region of New York State, gave birth to precursor to Seventh-day Adventism. Community leaders Isaac and... Oh man, I got an ad over here. How do I get rid of this? Hold on, guys. No. I can't move it. Oh no, this is not good. Help. Oh, there we go. Ah, dang it, it's back. Why? Okay, let me try again. What did I do last time? I am so sorry, you guys. There's like no X button or anything on this ad. This is annoying. How do I move you? No, I don't want to see more. I want to get you off my screen. Okay. Ah, no! This sucks. Okay, so I'm going to read around what I can see. I've still got that video, you guys. I'm so sorry. This is just sucky. Okay, community leaders, Isaac and blah, 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 sister story, and by the subsequent rumor that the spirit likely something murdered in the farmhouse 5 years beforehand, a group of something went in the Fox's home, uncovering strands of hair and what seemed to appear to be bone fragments. Okay, so I did get a little bit of that. So I'm thinking where they're living now, there was something that happened in the home and it actually was legit. Still trying to get this off of my screen. Let me see if I'm going to have any more issues down the road. No? Okay. So something at their home, anxious to see if they could communicate with blah, 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 went with as much unbelief as Thomas felt when he was introduced to Jesus after he had ascended. Isaac Post wrote, but he was swayed by very distinct thumps under the floor and several apparent answers. He was further convinced when Leah Fox also proved to be a medium, communicating with the Post's recently deceased daughter. The Post rented the largest hall in Rochester, and 400 people came to hear the mysterious noises. Afterward, Amy Post accompanied the sisters to a private chamber, where they disrobed and were examined by a committee of skeptics who found no evidence of a hoax. That's a little intrusive. Oh. Yeah, let me do that. Hold on. Because this is a new laptop. So I don't know where everything's at right now. Second.
If you shop on Amazon...
Sorry, now I'm pressing buttons. I cannot find a place to paste this at. I'm sorry, Molly. But I still have that video. So I'm going to go back to the article. This must be the house that they lived at when they moved to Rochester. Yeah, no, Hydesdale. Okay, so this was their first home. The Fox sisters' home, Hydesdale, New York, from Hudson Valley Halloween magazine. Oh, give me 1 second, guys. I have to mute my mic. All right, I apologize, guys. Let's head back to the article. Actually, can zoom in on this. Aw, never mind, I lied. It won't let me. Okay. The idea that one could communicate with spirits was hardly new. The Bible contains hundreds of references to angels administering to man, but the movement known as modern spiritualism sprang from several... Hold on 1 second again, guys. I apologize. All right, back to the article. The idea that one could communicate with spirits was hardly new. The Bible contains hundreds of references to angels administering to man, but the movement known as modern spiritualism sprang from several distinct revolutionary philosophies and characters. The ideas and practices of Franz Anton Mesmer, an 18th century Australian healer, had spread to the United States, and by the 1840s held the country in thrall. Mesmer proposed that everything in the universe, including the human body, was governed by a magnetic fluid that could become imbalanced, causing illness. By waving his hands over a patient's body, he induced a mesmerized hypnotic state that allowed him to manipulate the magnetic force and restore health. So this sounds like Reiki, guys. That's what we call Reiki now. Amateur mesmerists became a popular attraction at parties and in parlors, a few proving skillful enough to attract paying customers, Some who awakened from a mesmeric trance claim to have experienced visions of spirits from another dimension. At the same time, the ideas of Emmanuel Swedenborg, an 18th century Swedish philosopher and mystic, also surged in popularity. Swedenborg described an afterlife consisting of 3 heavens, 3 hells, and interim destination, the world of the spirits, where everyone immediately upon dying, and which was more or less to what they were accustomed to on earth. Self-love drove one toward the varying degrees of hell. Love for others elevated one to heavens. The Lord cast no one into hell, he wrote, but those there have deliberately cast themselves into it and keep themselves there. He claimed to have seen and talked with spirits on all of the planes. "75 years later, the 19th century seer Andrew Jackson Davis, who would become known as the John the Baptist of modern spiritualism, combined these two ideologies, complaining that Swedenborg's spirit spoke to him during a series of mesmeric trances. Davis recorded the content of these messages and in 1847 published them in a voluminous tome titled The Principles of Nature, Her Divine Revelations, and A Voice to Mankind. It is a truth, he asserted, predicting the rise of spiritualism, that spirits would commune with another while one is in the body and the other is in higher spheres. All the world will hail with delight the ushering in that era when the interiors of men will be opened and a spiritual communication will be established." Davis believed his prediction materialized Davis believed his prediction materialized a year later. On the very day the Fox sisters first channeled spirits in their bedroom. About daylight this morning, he confided to his diary, "A warm breathing passed over my face, and I heard, tender and strong, saying, 'Brother, the good work has begun. Behold, a living demonstration is born.'" And I think that's talking about the Fox sisters. Give me 1 second. All right, I am back for the 3rd time now. Sorry, I got kids, so they're coming to me for a bunch of other things. But that's the life of a mom. All right. So let's scroll down. There was a picture here, but there's this darn ad there again. I apologize. And that was of Andrew Jackson Davis. Upon hearing of the Rochester incident, Davis invited the Fox sisters to his home in New York City to witness their medium capabilities for himself. Joining his cause with the sisters, ghostly manifestations elevated his stature from obscure prophet to recognized leader of a mass movement, one that appealed to increasing numbers of Americans inclined to reject the gloomy Calvinistic doctrine of predestination and embrace the reform-minded optimism of the mid-19th century. Unlike their Christian contemporaries, Americans who adopted spiritualism believed they had a hand in their own salvation, a direct communication with those who had passed, offering insight into the ultimate fate of their own souls, and that I like to call spirit guides. And I do have my spirit guides with me all the time. They give me signs, and I do listen. Sometimes I don't get those messages right away, but then they make sense later. Maggie, Kate, and Leah Fox embarked on a professional tour to spread word of the spirits, booking a suite fittingly at Barnum's Hotel on the corner of Broadway and Maiden Lane, an establishment owned by a cousin of the famed showman. An editorial in the Scientific American scoffed at their arrival, calling the girls the spiritual knockers from Rochester. They conducted their sessions in the hotel's parlor, inviting as many as 30 attendees to gather around a large table at the hours of 10 a.m., 5 p.m., and 8 p.m., taking an occasional private meeting in between. Admission was $1, and visitors included preeminent members of New York society, Horace Greeley, the iconoclastic and influential editor of the New York Tribune, James Fenimore Cooper, editor and poet William Cullen Bryant, and abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison, who witnessed a session in which the spirits rapped in time to a popular song and spelled out a message: Spiritualism will work miracles in the cause of reform. Leah stayed in New York, entertaining callers in a seance room, while Kate and Maggie took the show to other cities, among them Cleveland, Cincinnati, Columbus, St. Louis, Washington, D.C., and Philadelphia, where one visitor, explorer Alicia, hey, that's my name, but spelled different, Alicia Kane, succumbed to Maggie's charms, even as he dreamed her a fraud. Although he couldn't prove how the sounds were made, after a whole month's trial, I could make nothing of them, he confessed. Therefore, they are a great mystery. He courted Maggie, 13 years his junior, and encouraged her to give up her life of dreary sameness and suspected deceit. She acquiesced, retiring to attend school at Kane's behest and expense, and married him shortly before his untimely death in 1857. To honor his memory, she converted to Catholicism, as Kane, a Presbyterian, had always encouraged. He seemed to think the fate's ornate iconography and sense of mystery would appeal to her. In mourning, she began drinking heavily and vowed to keep her promise to Kane to wholly and forever abandon spiritualism. Kate, meanwhile, married a devout spiritualist and continued to develop her medium powers, translating spirit messages in astonishing and unprecedented ways, communicating two messages simultaneously, writing one while speaking the other, transcribing messages in reverse script, utilizing blank cards upon which words seem to spontaneously appear. So we're talking tarot. Like, this would be the first tarot reading. And I forgot what the other one is. Automatic writing. So now there's automatic writing that she's speaking of when she's writing while speaking the other. During sessions with a wealthy banker, Charles Livermore, she summoned both the man's deceased wife and the ghost of Benjamin Franklin, who announced his identity by writing his name on a card. Her business boomed during and after the Civil War, as increasing numbers of the bereaved found solace in spiritualism. Prominent spiritualist Emma Hardinge wrote that the war added 2 million new believers to the movement, and by the 1880s, there was an estimated 8 million spiritualists in the United States and Europe. And this ties to, paranormal and believing in the paranormal now. It's the same thing. And it is growing. There's people out there that's still skeptics, and that's completely fine. But there's a lot more believers out there. These new practitioners, seduced by the flamboyance of the Gilded Age, expected miracles, like Kate's summoning of full-fledged apparitions at every seance. So that would be a clairvoyant. So Kate would have been a clairvoyant, and that's when you can physically see the spirit. It was wearying both to the movement and to Kate herself, and she too began to drink. On October 21st, 1888, the New York World published an interview with Maggie Fox in anticipation of her appearance that evening at the New York Academy of Music, where she would publicly denounce spiritualism. She was paid $1,500 for the exclusive. Her main motivation, however, was rage at her sister Leah and other leading spiritualists who had publicly chastised Katie for her drinking and accused her of being unable to care for her two young children. Kate planned to be in the audience when Maggie gave her speech, lending her tactic support. So it sounds like Maggie, she probably did have abilities, and she shut it all down because of the judgment from everyone out there. And then on top of that, what was going on with their two sisters, which is so sad. And once again, I got this stupid ad in my way. I apologize for saying that word. See if I can get it off the screen. All right, well, I will read around it. I apologize. You're not going to be able to see the whole thing. Something about young children. When this horrible deception began, Maggie said, at night when we used to go to bed, to tie an apple on a string and move the string up and down, something, or we would drop the apple on the floor, making a strange noise, something, graduated from apple dropping to manipulating their knuckles, something. A great many people, when they hear the rapping, imagined at something, she explained. It's a very common delusion. Some very wealthy people came to see them years ago when I lived in 42nd Street, and I did some rappings for them. I made the spirit rap on the chair, and one of the ladies cried out, I felt a spirit tapping me on the shoulder. Of course, that was pure imagination. She offered a demonstration, removing her shoe and placing her right foot upon a wooden stool. The room fell silent and still, and was rewarded with a number of short little raps. There stood a black-robed, sharp-faced widow, the New York Herald reported, working her big toe and solemnly declaring that it was in this way she created the excitement that has driven so many persons to suicide or insanity. One moment it was ludicrous, the next it was weird. Maggie insisted that her sister Leah knew that the rappings were fake all along and greedily exploited her younger sisters. Before exiting the stage, she thanked God that she was able to expose spiritualism. So maybe the money, there's something to do about the money possibly that made her come out the way that she did, because maybe this really was real. This really did happen, and they helped a lot of people. But after what her sisters were going through and stuff, and it got to where she just wanted to give up, and she found that way. This money came in, and back then $1,500 was a lot of money. So she went along with the story that she was told that she had to say in order to retire. Who knows? I don't know. I was not there. The mainstream press called the incident a death blow to the movement, and spiritualists quickly took sides. Shortly after Maggie's confession, the spirit of Samuel B. Britton, former publisher of the Spiritual Telegraph, appeared during a seance to offer a sympathetic opinion. Although Maggie was an authentic medium, he not acknowledged the band of spirits attending during the early part of her career had been usurped by other unseen intelligences who are not scrupulous in their dealings with humanity. Other living spiritualists charged that Maggie's change of heart was wholly mercenary. Since she had failed to make a living as a medium, she sought to profit by becoming one of the spiritualism's fiercest critics. So maybe he's like, well, she thought she can't beat him, might as well join him. But that's why we stand our ground, most of us in the paranormal field, because we know that there's things out there. We truly believe in this stuff, and we're out there to get that evidence, but not only to get the evidence, but to help people like these guys did. They helped, I guarantee they helped a lot of people contact their loved ones that they have lost, and the war that was going on that they lost them to. Whatever her motive, Maggie recanted her confession 1 year later. See, she recanted it. So there was something up, insisting that her spirit guides had beseeched her to do so. Her reversal prompted more disgust from devoted spiritualists, many of whom failed to recognize her as a subsequent debate at the Manhattan Liberal Club. There, under the pseudonym Mrs. Spencer, Maggie revealed several tricks of the profession, including the way mediums wrote messages on blank slates by using their teeth or feet. She never reconciled with her sister Leah, who died in 1890. Kate died 2 years later while on a drinking spree. Maggie passed away 8 months later in March of 1893. That year, spiritualists formed the National Spiritualist Association, which today is known as the Natural Spiritualist Association of Churches. So here's a picture depicting the seance that they would perform. Something about the Fox's sister's childhood home in Hydesville, known locally as the Spook House, discovered the majority of a skeleton between the earth and crumbling cedar walls. A doctor was consulted who estimated that the bones were about 50 years old, giving credence to the sister's tale of spiritual messages from a murdered peddler. But not everyone was convinced. So they really were channeling. You're getting messages from a spirit in that first home when they first had experience with spirit. And here's the evidence. They found skeletal remains. A doctor was consulted who estimated that the bones were about 50. Oh, I read that. The New York Times reported that the bones had created a stir amusingly disproportionate to any necessary significance of the discovery, and suggested that the sisters had merely been clever enough to exploit a local mystery. Even if the bones were that of the murdered peddler, the Times concluded there would still remain that dreadful confession about the clicking joints, which reduces the whole case to a farce. 5 years later, another doctor examined the skeleton and determined that it was made up of only a few ribs with odds and ends of bones, and among them a superabundance of some and a deficiency of others. Among them also were chicken bones. He also reported a rumor that a man living near the spook house had planted the bones as a practical joke, but was too ashamed to come clean. So that is our article. And now I'm going to pop up the little video clip that I have. And this video is, I think it's like 16 minutes long. So let me get on over to that. Just give me 1 second, guys. Hope you're finding this interesting like I am.
You should use this tool. It's a browser extension that automatically...
The existence of supernatural forces is not a new debate. Skepticism surrounding both the practice and belief of spiritualism has been long contested throughout the course of time. For most, the Fox sisters may not ring a bell. For others, they are commonly regarded as key figures who contributed to the establishment of the Spiritualism movement in the mid-1800s. While they did not start or create spiritualism, their role in its history is one worth exploring. Since ancient times, people from many cultures have tried communicating with spirits and the dead. The mysterious afterlife and the existence of supernatural beings has baffled and intrigued believers and have been challenged by skeptics for as long as we've been asking the question, what happens after we die? For some, the debate isn't whether or not one believes in mediumship, but if it is an act of rebellion against one's religion to practice or participate in it. The term séance derives from the French word for seat or session. It came into popular use in Europe and America in the mid-1800s, during a time when Victorian-era Gothic literature and art were also popular. Victorian-era Gothic fiction often explored the supernatural and spiritualism, or the belief that the dead can communicate with the living. This time also experienced an emergence of several popular figures who were pushing forth a spiritualist and overall mystic agenda, such as Franz Anton Mesmer. Mesmer was a German physician who believed that all things, including the human body, were controlled by a magnetic fluid that, when imbalanced, could cause physical and mental ailments. His practice involved waving his hands over his patients' bodies, inducing a mesmerized hypnotic state, which he claimed allowed him to manipulate the magnetic field and help rebalance their health. Some who were put into a mesmeric trance said that they had visions of spirits during their experience. His theories of the universe also gained popularity in the United States. Those who followed in his footsteps and practiced this were known as mesmerists. Although he lived and practiced long before Mesmer was even born, the philosophies of Swedish mystic Emmanuel Swedenborg gained popularity around the same time. Swedenborg believed in an afterlife of 3 heavens, 3 hells, and one sort of purgatory, which was very similar to Earth. Additionally, Swedenborg claimed that he was able to communicate with spirits existing on every plane. American seer Andrew Jackson Davis, a man the Fox sisters would later cross paths with, also became...
Have you guys been able to hear this the whole time? Because I muted my mic. Please post in the comments. All right, I'm going to mute my mic then again and continue with this video.
Became renowned, in part for combining these two philosophies, saying that Swedenborg's spirit had communicated with him during a series of mesmeric trances. It has been said that the Fox family were no strangers to mediumship, as members of Mrs. Fox's family were believed to have the gift of foresight, frequently predicting events that would come to pass. Margaret Smith married John Fox, who was the son of a blacksmith. The couple had 7 children in total. Their firstborn died in infancy. And before the last 2 children were born, there was a time where Margaret and John separated due to his struggle with alcoholism. John left his family in the 1820s, later returning to his family as a restored man in the 1830s, after having converted to the Methodist Church. It was then that the couple had their last 2 children, Margaret and Catherine, also known as Maggie and Kate, who were 4 years apart. The pair were a part of the trio eventually known as the Fox sisters. In 1848, the Fox family lived in a home in the New York countryside, where the first known reports of strange happenings surrounding the Fox sisters began. Physical phenomena, from knocks to rappings, caused the Fox house to quickly gain a reputation for odd occurrences, which often took place in the presence of Maggie and Kate. Many, including the sisters, attributed the noises to spirits. One in particular was that of a peddler who was allegedly murdered on the property. The disturbances eventually brought the Foxes to send Maggie and Kate to Rochester to deliver their oldest sister Leah, thinking that it would spare the girls from the supernatural pestering, since most believed that it was the house that was causing the phenomena. Rochester, at the time, was a hot spot of reform and religious activities, and quickly learned about the incidences surrounding the Fox girls. Word of supernatural activities continued to spread, drawing people to the cottage to listen to the strange rappings for themselves.
People with disabilities probably can't use your website.
As curiosity grew, a group of Rochester residents proposed to examine the cellar. Their investigation unearthed some baffling evidence. Found in the soil were strands of hair and something resembling bone fragments, supporting the story of a murdered peddler whose spirit, among others, were suspected to be the cause of the phenomena. Family friends Amy and Isaac Post took notice of the girls' gifts and invited them over to a gathering at their home to see if they were able to communicate with spirits outside of the Fox's own home. The Posts were community leaders in magnetism, or mesmerism, which are physical phenomena resembling hypnotism. In an attempt to communicate with their deceased daughter, Mr. Post put Leah in a trance where they discovered that she too, like Maggie and Kate, had mediumship abilities. The experiment opened up a new avenue of verbal mediumship, allowing for a wider range of communications to be explored. Isaac Post wrote, "I suppose I went with as much unbelief as Thomas felt when he was introduced to Jesus after he had ascended, but believed in the sister's abilities after hearing very distinct thumps under the floor and several apparent answers, as well as by Leah's mediumistic abilities." The Post rented out the largest hall in Rochester, big enough to house 400 people who turned up to listen and witness the noises for themselves in the presence of the sisters. To debunk the skeptics, the sisters were escorted by Mrs. Post to a private room, where they were disrobed and examined by those questioning their authenticity. Nothing was found hidden on their bodies. The sisters were clear of any contraptions or props that might have been used to produce the noises. Much to the critics' dismay, this added credibility to the sisters' abilities, thus weakening any accusations of fraud. Their live seance caught the attention of seer Andrew Jackson Davis, who would later become known as John Baptiste of modern spiritualism. Davis wanted to witness the Fox sisters' gifts for himself, so he invited them to New York City for a demonstration. It was said that Davis wrote in his diary on the same day the Fox sisters channeled in their bedroom for the first time. "About daylight this morning, a warm breathing passed over my face, and I heard a voice, tender and strong, saying, 'Brother, the good work has begun. Behold, a living demonstration is born.'" His support of the Fox sisters not only added momentum to their success, but for the movement as a whole. Accounts of the Fox sisters' career in mediumship varies, but most commonly, it is said that in 1849, Maggie, Kate, and Leah Fox were instructed to give public demonstrations of their mediumship to spread word of spiritualism. By 1850, they began performing demonstrations at a parlor in the Barnum Hotel in New York, with invited and paying guests arriving to watch. Sessions were available at 10 a.m., 5 p.m., and 8 p.m. for a fee of $1 per session. When not conducting during these times, the sisters took private meetings in between. Among these guests were prominent figures from the publishing and newspaper industries, such as editor Horace Greeley, who was convinced by the experience, delivering reports that essentially endorsed the sisters' authenticity, ultimately boosting their fame. Other notable members of New York society who attended the seances included editor and poet William Cullen Bryant and James Fenimore Cooper, author of The Last of the Mohicans, who fully believed in their abilities. Adding to that list of attendees was abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison, with whom an infamous incident occurred during his session with the sisters. Spirits rapped together, spelling out a message of hope. Spiritualism will work miracles in the cause of reform. Their public sessions grew into a tour, one that began in major cities in the eastern United States, including Cleveland, Cincinnati, Columbus, St. Louis, Washington, D.C., and Philadelphia. However, it was only Maggie and Kate who went on tour, as Leah continued to hold seances in a private room back in New York. She also reportedly capitalized on some transatlantic work opportunities as well. The increase in their fame and popularity not only resulted in spiritualism becoming a trend, but making it the subject of significant controversy. The Fox sisters' work inspired many who would follow suit in practicing mediumship, such as Victoria Claflin Woodhull, who became a leader of the women's suffrage movement and would also become the very first woman to run for president of the United States in 1872. The sisters' sessions also led to the formation of plenty of cultists and pseudo-religious crusadings. The Paris Review reports, "From the Fox sisters, the phenomenon of spiritualism emerged not as some shadowy occult practice or roadside attraction, but as an exciting way of reconciling the ineffable mysteries of the soul with the complex realities of a modern, rapidly industrializing nation. Even though many skeptics questioned their authenticity, no evidence of explicit fraud was ever found against the Fox sisters. Other famous mediums that would emerge over time include Cora Scott Hatch, Edgar Cayce, and Arthur Ford, to name a few. Further down the line, Harry Houdini would become one of the fiercest opponents of fake seances, and was known to crusade against the mediums he believed to be inauthentic. For years, Houdini sought out a real medium in an attempt to reach his deceased mother, and upon his own death, promised his wife he would contact her through a medium. The Fox sisters and their world of metaphysical adventure also fascinated and possibly made believers out of several more notable figures, such as the chemist Sir William Crookes, who would pioneer developments in photography and electricity, and discovered the element thallium, John Logie Baird, who developed television, Alexander Graham Bell and Guglielmo Marconi, inventors of the telephone and radio. While touring in 1852, Maggie met explorer Elisha Kent Kane, who was an attendee of one of their seances. Although Elisha himself was a skeptic, he was swept away by Maggie's charm. He was 13 years her senior, and while it seemed that Maggie was initially not interested in a man so much older than her, they eventually were married in a private ceremony. In their short time together, Elisha continuously wished to remove Maggie from the spiritualist world and properly educate her, to which Maggie finally obliged, leaving spiritualism and the seances behind her. Maggie became a widow just 5 years later, and was baptized into the Roman Catholic Church in August 1858, something her late husband always wanted for her. She renounced spiritualism from that point on. It's noted that Kate and their parents were by her side during the baptism. Elisha's family had disapproved of his marriage to Maggie, and upon his death refused to acknowledge her status as his wife or widow.
Doesn't matter if you're male or female, taking the thermal shred stack is the best way to get lean and stay shredded.
Even denying her any claim to his estate. She later published Elisha's love letter to her in a book titled The Love Life of Dr. Kane. Unfortunately, it came nearly 10 years after Elisha's death, and did poorly. Seeking comfort in a troubling time, Maggie turned to alcohol, eventually spiraling into poverty. Also in 1858, Leah ceased offering her services for money after marrying her third husband, a wealthy businessman and spiritualist, Daniel Uphill. As for Kate, she would continue to develop her skills as a medium, coming up with incredible ways to convey messages, including writing and speaking 2 different messages at the same time. She traveled to England to capitalize on the growing interest in spiritualism. In 1872, while in London, she met a fellow spiritualist and lawyer named Henry Diedrich Jenkin, whom she married. Their marriage lasted just short of a decade, before Kate would, too, become a widow. The death of her husband in 1881 only made matters worse for Kate. The pressure to perform became too much for her, and she, like Maggie, turned to alcohol for comfort. As Kate's life also spiraled, Leah added insult to injury by accusing Kate of being unfit to care for her own children, resulting in them being taken away from her. The sisters' relationship was compromised by their personal struggles. Having seemingly reached some kind of wit's end, Maggie was now in opposition of the very thing that made the Fox sisters. On May 27, 1888, Maggie Fox told the New York Herald, "Spiritism is a curse. No matter what form Spiritism presents itself, it is, was, and always will be a curse and a trap for all who engage with it." And on October 21, 1888, she would take it a step further, going on stage at New York's Academy of Music to expose the sisters herself. Leading up to this, Maggie knew nothing of the fight between Leah and Kate, having learned about it through the New York Herald. Before a crowd filled with spiritualists, she began to tell them how she and her sisters had tricked the public into believing the fraud of spiritualism. At her side was Kate, validating her every statement. She would go on to speak of their experience with the fraud, claiming, "I repented it in my maturity. I have lived through years of silence, through intimidation, scorn, and bitter adversity, concealing as best I might the consciousness of my guilt. Now, thanks to God and my awakened conscience, I am at last able to reveal the fatal truth, the exact truth of this hideous fraud which has withered so many hearts and blighted so many hopeful lives. I am here tonight as one of the founders of spiritualism, to denounce it as an absolute falsehood from beginning to end, as the flimsiest of superstitions, the most wicked blasphemy known to the world. Maggie claimed that the whole act started as a way to scare their mother, who was superstitious, and proceeded to demonstrate how they produced the wrappings that enthralled so many people. She removed her right shoe and placed her foot on a short wooden stool. The room grew silent as the crowd paid close attention. Moments later, the sound of wrappings could be heard. 3 physicians who observed her during the demonstration came on stage to confirm that the sound had indeed been produced by the first joint of her big toe. The revelation sprung the pair into an exposé tour, showing their tricks around the country. However, their best days were behind them, as the success fell short to that of their earlier days. Despite Maggie's confession, many in the spiritualism world did not give it much value. Due to her diminished mental state, alcoholism, and their steadfast belief in spiritualism, they easily dismissed her claims that the wrappings were false, instead choosing to believe that the sisters themselves were frauds. Since Maggie was paid $1,500 for her confession, some claimed that poverty was the motivation behind her action. It was possible she'd simply done it for the money, and not.
And I have to comment on that, because what did I say earlier? I said I have a feeling that she didn't quit because of the passion for it, and that she really was a channel, or she had these mediumship abilities. I feel like it was about the money, and also, the situation with the sisters. So, and here it is. They're talking about it right now.
Not because she believed what she was saying. However, some have stated that Maggie's true motivation for revealing their secrets was to get back at their sister Leah. Maggie claimed that Leah exploited her and Kate when they were young and impressionable for her own financial gain and fame. Due to Maggie's public criticism of Kate's alcoholism, some blamed her for Kate losing custody of her children. Mediums and seances have long been questioned for authenticity, and many were found to be fraudulent. But in a strange twist, and perhaps in support of those who could not accept the sisters' confession, they would retract the confessions just a year later. Some in the spiritualist community were delighted, while others still looked down upon them. Maggie and Kate continued taking what work they could find within spiritualism. And in 1893, the infamous sisters transitioned to the other side, dying just months apart from each other. The duo of the trio lived their final days impoverished, and it was said that Maggie and Leah never patched things up. So what happens when we die? And can the dead really communicate with the living? Truth is, the answers to those questions will likely always remain unsolved.
I forgot to unmute my mic. So there we have it. Paranormal history of the Fox sisters and others. I wanted to do this article and that video, which I do not own rights to, because I wanted to find out, I wanted to talk about how people first started communicating with spirits. So this is what they would do back during the Spiritualist movement. So that was the article that I shared with you guys. I did that video with you guys. What did you all think? I'll wait till I get some comments. Don't forget to share this, please, if you have not yet. And hi, David. Thanks for tuning in. Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. I love history. And I did, paranormal history. Come on now. So, with that being said, got one more comment. Couple more comments. Very interesting. I had heard of the Fox sisters, but never took the time on it. I'm glad you did. Thank you. I'm glad that you tuned in. You always share your support, Molly. I love you. That's my best friend from middle school, guys. We've been friends for years. I got her back. She's got mine. I know, dude. I wanted to come into that event that you did for tarot reading, but I had to work. I work seconds, so I'm 2:30 to 10:30 every day that I work. So I apologize, but you're amazing, dude, and I appreciate you coming in here and sharing your support. Well, with that being said, I am your host, Alicia. This is Eternal Paranormal. I am eternally grateful that you all came in, tuned in, shared out, and I will see you all next time. Stay spooky. Bye.